Hey guys, welcome back. This is the homepage of our new website. I'm doing this for those of you that haven't seen this new site yet, and I updated it yesterday with an explanation as to why we're not going to make our Christmas release goal. It basically just explains that we've had a couple of setbacks, but we're still working hard every day to get these pedals out to you as quickly as possible. Okay, so I had originally taken a nice long video from down in the shop, and that video was meant to give you guys some idea of what I've been going through these past couple of weeks. And well, that video turned out great, but the audio was lost. I have no idea what happened there. So I decided to make another video, but this time I'm just going to show you guys a bunch of pictures that I took recently, and they'll give you some idea of what I'm talking about here. Okay, so about 2 weeks ago, I was cutting these little bushings, and this is a picture of the bushings I was cutting. I was cutting these bushings, and I noticed that on one side of the sheet, the cutting tool, that is the router bit, it would reach the workpiece just fine on one side, but on the other side of the sheet, you could see where the tool was supposed to be cutting, but it wasn't quite reaching the aluminum sheet. So I decided to take everything off the machine and start checking it to make sure that it was level and square. After I checked to make sure that everything was okay, I went to cut a new sheet. This time I was cutting a much bigger piece, so when the machine would get to its limits as in the cutting area, I noticed that the pieces that I cut weren't lining up when placing them side by side. Some of the holes were off, and some pieces were shorter or longer than others, and it wasn't off by much, but enough that I couldn't use the pieces. Okay, so just to give you some idea of how this machine works, this machine is known as a CNC router. It has 4 different axes, well, actually 3, but one of them is labeled as the A axis, so consider it 4 just for the sake of argument. This machine rides along these rails, and you can see that it uses roller bearings that are shaped like a V on the inside, and it rides on these rails that are also shaped like a V. These rails are actually hardened steel, which makes this even more bizarre. I knew that something wasn't right, so I decided to check these rails to see if they were straight. And here you can see that I used a tape measure to measure the distance between the A-axis rail on the top and the X-axis rail at the very top. Using a tape measure isn't exactly very accurate, but I'm just checking to see if it's somewhat close. I measured the distances between these rails in increments, and I soon discovered that the rail on the X-axis was bent significantly. At one point, the difference between one section of the 2 rails was more than a 1/16 of an inch, and that's bad. That means that the cutting tool on the router would cut parts that had a bow in them when they were supposed to be flat. Now, here's a picture of what the rail looked like when looking at it head-on. You can see the bow in the top. I marked it with a red line so that you can see it a little easier. I also took a picture of the gap that this caused when you place a straight edge up against the very end of the rail, and you can see the gap here in this picture. So I contacted the company that I purchased this machine from. It's CNCRouterparts.com, and let me just say that these guys are phenomenal. After more than a month of use, they sent me out 3 new axes for free. They sent the Y-axis, the X-axis, and the A-axis so that I could exchange them with the ones that I was using. I really can't say enough about these guys. Alright, so the new axes arrived within a few days. I was putting everything together when I noticed something really odd. I took the Y-axis out of the box and placed it vertically on the table. Here's a picture of the Y-axis on the table. And no, the bottom is not supposed to look like that. You see that bend in the bracket on the end of it? Yeah, that was done during shipping. And let me tell you, that's not easy to do. That's a thick piece of aluminum. Someone dropped this thing from a really massive height, or they threw it down on the ground. I don't know what happened, but if you'd seen how things were packaged, you'd know that this was not easy to do. So I called CNC Router Parts again to tell them what had happened. And this is how cool these guys are. They sent me out a replacement next day air for free. I really just can't say enough about these guys. They really do treat their customers well. Okay, so I received the new Y-axis within a couple of days and managed to get everything back together by this weekend. So Sunday rolls around and I start cutting a few more pieces. And I notice that there's still something wrong. It's really slight, but there's still a problem. And I found out that the entire Y-axis was twisted somewhat. And here you can see the shims that I placed behind the bracket that holds the Y-axis on the left side, or on the right side, depending on which way you look at it. So that took care of the twist. Now, I managed to get some cuts in yesterday, and it looks as if I've got the machine exactly where I need it. It's cutting nice and straight. The holes are lining up, the parts are the same sizes. It looks like things should be good from now on. I had to make some minor adjustment with the proximity switches yesterday, and here's a picture of what these switches look like. These switches help the machine square itself. Without these switches, you'd never be able to get the machine squared up. Well, guys, that's what I've been dealing with for the past couple of weeks. It hasn't been fun, but it has been a learning experience for me. I'm sorry that I haven't had a time to get a video out to you guys lately. I hope that I can at least give you guys a real quick update every week from now on, and we'll see how that goes. Alright guys, we'll see you next time.